Or on behalf of the youth, Safer Society organizations from the Fair Share Campaign Liberia, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our special event. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. I am Iwedi Williams, and I, together with my colleague from the All African Student Union, Hader Nikoa, will be moderating today. I am the National Coordinator of Liberia. And without any delay, permit me to give the floor to our Nobel laureate, Mr. Khaled Satyati, this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, my dear friends, dear young friend Uvale, Vinny, and I know that there are two honorable ministers, Minister Gibson and Minister Carr. But let me tell you that each time when I sit with someone who is an ocean of love, who is a powerhouse, who possesses enormous, unprecedented power of compassion, courage, conviction, resilience, and the power of change. And that is my very, very dear sister, Lema. I had a great opportunity to spend some time in Liberia about one and a half years ago, just before pandemic. Perhaps that was my last, or definitely one of the last trips abroad before the pandemic began. And each minute, I felt that light, that energy, being with Lema, as well as being with my young friends in Peace Jam, 100 Million Campaign, some of the friends I met who belonged to Linsu or ASU. And today I'm grateful to both of these student unions who are able to organize this important event. This is a historic day. Many of us keep on attending and participating, speaking at several occasions, several conferences and meetings. But when you stand up and speak on behalf of the most marginalized, the most vulnerable, the most exploited children, and then challenge this discrimination, institutional, social discrimination, then you start writing a new chapter in the history of change. That is the moment when you show your courage and your conviction and your commitment to bend the arc of history in favor of those who are always left out. Today, when we are talking about and launching Fair Share campaign, it is not a slogan. It is not a tagline of a campaign. When we talk of fair share, we talk of changing the society, changing the culture, changing the future of humankind. I have been saying that one of the biggest mistakes, I would call it sin, which the people in power have done, is that they denied fair share for our children, and particularly the most marginalized children. And when we are launching this campaign here, we are going to challenge this historical mistake, that sin which has been committed in the past. And Liberia is a place which is full of resilience, full of power. When I visited some small villages and some cities last time, I could feel that you have the power. Young people and elderly people whom I met, they had this unprecedented power of resilience. I have seen that smile despite being so poor. I visited that place only a few months or a year later when this Ebola erupted. And we have seen that the people are now challenging this new pandemic. But this pandemic, whether it's Ebola or it's Corona, are not simply health crisis or economic crisis. These are the crises of justice, crisis of childhood, crisis of education, crisis of future of humankind. And if some countries feel that they can solve such problems in isolation, with their own might, with their own power, they are wrong. I always say that Africa is the mirror of human civilization. It's the mother of human civilization. It is the wealthiest land in the world. But when we learn that half of the world's children who are forced, who are pushed into child labor, belong to sub-Saharan African region, what is their fault? Because they are born in poor families, because they are born in a certain region, and that region which is the wealthiest part of the world. This is unacceptable. Dear friends, this is intolerable. We cannot let it go like that. During this pandemic, world has created 17 billionaires every day. But on that very day, 10,000 children have been pushed into child labor and trafficking, whose age is between 5 and 11. How can you allow this to continue? So much progress has been made in the world. We live in a different age of information technology and artificial intelligence and whatnot. I would also like to tell you that when ILO and UNICEF have announced the new report, new figure, new data about child labor, it made me so angry because there is no excuse, there is no justification that in 4 pre-pandemic years, I'm not talking about the pandemic time, I'm talking about the 4 years before the pandemic, and these are the 4 critical years after declaration, after adoption of the new roadmap of development, and that is Sustainable Development Goal. Number of child laborers have increased for the first time in 20 years. We had only 152 million. Now we have 160 million child laborers. More than 8.4 million children have been added to this child labor workforce. And the apprehensions are that several million children may not come back to school. They are not going to come back to their classrooms. Some estimates show that if we don't act now with a sense of urgency, with utmost priority and compassion for our children, if we don't invest in education for our children, then 24 million children will not come back to their classrooms. And where these children are going to go? And who are these children? If majority of these children belong to sub-Saharan Africa, it means there is something fundamentally wrong. There is an evil. Would Africa be always be used to take out the minerals, the golds, the fishes, palm oil, cocos for chocolate? This cannot continue. Once we launch this campaign in Liberia, this means Liberia is going to take a flag in the hand that we are not going to tolerate it anymore. Our children have the same right as a child in America, United States of America, or in Germany, or in England, or any place of the world has. And that is possible when the young people like you, my dear friends, from the student unions and the youth organizations stand up. And today is that day. You are going to do it, dear friends. Our two honorable ministers are sitting here. I'm aware that a lot of work has been done by your government, but much more is needed. The program related to power to the people, to empower the poorest citizens of Liberia is undergoing. I've read about it. There are other efforts being made by the gender ministry. A lot of efforts are being made by labor ministry and other ministries, education ministry. But we have to scale up. And that is not only the job of Liberia alone. This is the time when the international community has to show not only the solidarity, not only the talk shop, but they have to bring resources on table. These commitments have been made time and again by the international community. And this is the time because pandemic is going to leave most devastating effect on the most marginalized children of the world, and particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. And therefore, on one hand, the international community has to work, but on the other hand, the civil society organizations, the youth organizations, as well as the government in these countries, and particularly I would request our honorable ministers in Liberia to take up this as a challenge and work towards elimination of child labor. And that's why a good, well-resourced National Action Plan for Eradication of Child Labor should be in place. Or whatever plan is there, it requires adequate budgetary allocation. That is the key. Investment on eradication child labor is an investment in protecting the future of the entire generation. It's an investment in ensuring dignity, liberty, and future of our children. It's an investment in making sure that the generation who is going to take over us in the future is a strong, educated, healthy generation. Child labor causes poverty. Child labor causes and perpetuates illiteracy. It causes and perpetuates unemployment. It causes and perpetuates ill health. And that's why child labor is one of the biggest impediment in attaining any of the development goals. And we all know that the world is committed to eradicate child labor by 2025. All forms of child labor by 2025. How many years are left? We cannot hide behind an excuse that there was Ebola and now there is Corona. So, dear friends, it's our collective responsibility to take it up. If you don't do, who will do? Whose children who are trapped into gold mines in sub-Saharan Africa? Whose children are working day in and day out at the cost of their liberty and their life in fisheries? Whose children are working? Those who have not tasted chocolate in their life, but they are working as slaves, trafficked from the neighboring countries and from within Ghana and Ivory Coast, whom I met several times. Whose children are they? Whose children are forced to do prostitution at the age of 10, 11, 12, 13? In such a rich land with such beautiful people, So, dear young friends, you have to go back with a strong commitment. I have full faith in young people. You have to take the charge. You are the one who are going to rewrite the history of humankind, the history of justice, the history of equality, the history of peace. And once again, I thank you very much. And I am so pleased and so privileged to have my dear sister Lema beside us after me. Thank you so much, dear friends.
Thank you, Mr. Satyati. And next speaker will be our Honorable Madam Nobel Peace Laureate, daughter of the Soul Liberia, Honorable Lemans Bowie. She will be our next speaker. Thanks.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. To my brother Kalash, I say good afternoon or good evening. I'm in New York, so it's good morning from me. It is an absolute honor to be a part of the Fair Share campaign. Kalash, you've been doing so much in this work for so many years, trying to highlight the plight of young people, the plight of young children, the unfair labor practices with children. My own interaction with this was several years ago. I got invited to speak at one of the biggest retreat for some of the largest chocolate companies in the world. I was asked to go to this very exotic place in Switzerland, and all of these CEOs were there. And when I got there, my first question to them was, why am I invited here? And they said, oh, you do human rights work and we want you to come and speak. And I said, I understand all of that because it took us months to arrange for me to get here. I understand all of that. My only issue is how many cocoa workers, how many farmers, cocoa farmers are at this retreat? And they said none. How many women farmers are at this retreat? And they said none. How many children farmers are at this retreat? And they said none. And my point to them was, next year, if you really want to talk human rights, if you really want someone who can come and speak to the CEOs about the unfair practices, my take would be invite someone who worked the fields to come and speak. I made that request of them because I had seen the documentary that was done by CNN some months before, where young children who work in the fields, the cocoa fields in Ivory Coast and Ghana, had never tasted chocolate. They didn't even know what chocolate looked like. And this, at that time, was a very huge movement for young children to stop being in the fields and working. But if you look at the labor practices, the unfair labor practices, you will tend to find that it's not just in the cocoa field. In our own streets in Monrovia, daily parents, children are out there selling. I remember encountering a child one evening, and this is my normal practice, whether I'm in Ghana, Liberia, and it's late in the evening and he has a whole bunch of plantain on his head and he's crying. So I asked him why he was crying. He said because they didn't buy from him. And if he went home, they were going to beat him up for not selling all of his market. So I bought everything from him and gave him transportation. A second time I saw a girl at the toll booth in Ghana and she was selling pure water at 8 p.m. She was still there when all of the other hawkers had gone home. I told my driver to pull over, stop and ask her. Because the first thing I thought about was not just about her selling, it was about the possibility of her being sexually molested or raped. It was the possibility of her being taken. There were so many possibilities that ran in my head in those short moments. And so she said, so I said, okay, we took every bit of the water she had and threw it away, paid for everything and told her to find her way home. I highlight these two stories to say that it is not a strange phenomenon if you live in Africa, if you live in Liberia, if you live in other parts of the world, to see young children out there. And people tend to try to disconnect peace from these issues. When my brother Kalash won the Nobel Peace Prize, I was more than ecstatic. Why? Because when we try to measure peace in the absence of war, we do a disservice to the rest of humanity. We do a disservice to the rest of people, the rest of the people who have been working day in and day out to bring to bear some of the issues. My own definition of peace that I have stuck with me and that I continue to put out there is that peace is not just the absence of war. Peace is the presence of every condition that dignifies you and I. So if a child is not in a state of dignity, that child is not at peace. And if that child, or if a huge population of a nation is in a state of indignity, that nation cannot boast of having peace. So for our own side, as Liberians, it is important for us, and this campaign is important for all of us to raise our voices in the issue. Many months ago, when I sat with some delegation from the US talking about the labor practices and child abuse and all of the different things, they were like, Liberia was on track. Recently, I read that we have fallen off track. So it's time for us to really increase the sound of our advocacy. It's time for us to say to government, yes, you've done this in this area. Laws and policies are not, they are good, but they are not good until they are implemented. And you cannot separate child labor issue from the economic issues that is pending in the homes. Why do people send their children from the villages to Monrovia to go to school? Because there are no opportunities in those areas. If you create a better economic opportunity for young children, for families, people will not easily give up their children to come into homes under the guise of going to school to be slaved. So I think it's important for us, whilst we talk about advocacy, whilst we talk about the implementation of the policies and what the government needs to do, whilst we talk about what international communities need to do, it is important for us to create all of the linkages, health, education, economic empowerment, agriculture, all of those different things. How do we bring them together? Because if you have a successful and a prosperous nation, it's very difficult for child labor practices to thrive. In our situation as Liberia, we have this issue as a real serious issue because there are so many linkages to it, and it's important for us to start. Recently, our foundation, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we partnered with the Foundation for Educating Children. They call them Ingbanga Force, Foundation for Recreation and Children's Education. Force did a survey in Banga of young children who had been selling in the streets. And they went home to these children's parents to say to them, why are these children in the streets selling till nightfall? And a lot of the families said because they didn't have money to send these children to school. One child in particular, his story was he would sell, he would wake up early and had to wash dishes because the person he lived with has a cook shop, so he needed to be helping in the kitchen. And then he was expected to go to school, perform, come from school, and go and sell in the street again. So when the force group got to the family, they asked them, if we send this child to school, would you allow him to sell? And the answer was a resounding no. So they presented to the foundation, the Bowie Peace Foundation, a total number of 25 students to say to us that these are the families who agree to take their children out of the streets if you give them educational opportunity. And for the last 4 years, sending these children to school, and true to the words of the family, they have not been involved because what the force does is to ensure that after school, they come for after classes, they learn different skills and different things. So this has been a model that I think is very effective and very efficient. Kalash, I know that in your work over time, you have been in the practice of going and getting children It's nothing compared to what you're doing, and it's just a trickle in the bucket. But I believe that if each and every one of us can really just put our resources together and get one child out of slavery, get one child out of a labor practice, we've done a great service to humanity. I want to commit to working with the group in Liberia. The foundation will work with you all because, of course, whatever Kalash says, Lehman does because he's my brother, and I believe in his work. I believe in his in him showing up for young people. He has a track record for doing this. When I was in India, I went to his center. I tell people it was one of my most beautiful days. The stories of those young people who were bonded laborers, who have now become lawyers and engineers and doctors. And I don't think that's the story that should start with India, should start with Kalash. Let's bring his vision home to Liberia. And let's see how we can work with the Bowie Peace Foundation and with other foundations to do what we're able to do. All of those economic issues that are holding children into those spaces that they should not be in are issues that we should work together to eliminate. If not, on a part of government, all we can do is to continue to advocate. But I don't want, for those of you in the campaign in Liberia, please don't focus on statistics and data when you're going to parliament. Don't focus on what the UN has already done. It's important for you to take true life story. Recently, on another issue, I had a conversation with a lawmaker, one of the top lawmakers in Liberia, and we're talking about the whole issue of women's rights and sexual violence. And he asked me, why are women not safe? So I said, you don't understand why women are not safe? And he said, no. And I realized that everyone who have gone to these individuals to do advocacy has carried data and statistics and a lot of things that sounded foreign to them. And so I started breaking it down to him to give him stories of young girls, of women who had been raped and abused and mutilated and killed. And he sat down and said, if I get it like this in raw data, I'm able to convince my colleagues for us to do stuff. So my own input to the group in Liberia, when you're taking these issues to parliament, please do not read all data and statistics. Tell stories, actual stories of young children in our communities that are suffering, that are going through these issues, that have been, you read on the internet of children who have hot oil poured into their hands by people they live with because they took a piece of food to eat because they were so hungry. You have children who have been beaten to a pulp. Tell these stories and make our kids. There is not a single father or mother who have children. I have 8 of my own, and I love all 8 of them babies. And then I have over 1,000 more from the foundation, all of the work that we're doing in Liberia. There is not a single person that you tell a story of a child suffering in slavery that will not stand up and do something. If you don't remember anything I said, the work that you're doing is a work of peace. Because the person that you follow is a great father of peace, Kalash. And the reason why he's a father of peace is because he did not just stop his work in ending wars. His work is about creating a condition that dignifies the next generation. A lot of us are working to create conditions for the now. Kalash is fighting to create conditions for the future. And as all of you have joined in this fight, creating conditions for the next generation of leaders in Liberia, in Africa, and the rest of the world, it is upon me and those that work with me to join hands with you all and make this a reality. This fair share campaign ending bad labor practices or even labor practices for young people. It is important for all of us to get involved. And I can tell you that without any doubt, I'm repeating it, that I will be involved with you all. Because until every child is free, until every child can envision a future for themselves, until every child can look and say, tomorrow I want to be a doctor, and there is a rainbow in the clouds to make them to know that they too can be. until every child can dream this dream in the right way, none of us has a future. I, in particular, do not have a legacy to live on. So as we think about building back better, as we think about building back stronger, I don't believe in dismantling, but I believe in this. Right now, we need to dismantle all of the structures that makes child labor practices a reality and build back stronger to ensure that it is not a reality anymore. We come from a nation that I call a nation of double standards. Liberians will tell you, oh, we don't do those things here. But if you dig deeper, if you look down deep and deeper, they are there in our communities, in our homes. And for you young people who are leading this campaign, please do not just focus on government. In our communities, every day you see it. You see a child in slavery. If you're able to pluck that child out of slavery, please do. My sister died when she was 40. But my sister, when we were growing up, was one of those persons who would teach all of the children in the community the alphabet. There was this one girl who lived next door, and she would wake up at 3 in the morning. As we're going to school, we'll see her scrubbing pots. And as we come from school, we'll see her scrubbing something. Night will fall, if you look out the window, you will see her working. She was toiling day and night, and she was being beaten, and there was not a single person in that community who would speak for this child. One day, my sister said to us, oh, I've been teaching this girl the alphabet secretly. And we're asking her, how do you do that? She said, oh, when she's going to fetch water, I followed her. After a few months, one day there was this alarm in the community that this girl had gotten missing. And everyone was anxious, and my sister was just sitting there. She was very quiet. And we said, but they say your friend is gone missing. She didn't say anything. Later on that night, when we went into our room, because we're 5 daughters, my mother had no sons. We're lying in our room, and she said, I have something to tell you all. I stole some money from Mama's bag, and I paid the girl way to go back to her family. So I helped her to run away. And we were like, are you serious? And she said, yes, because if she had stayed here, the beatings would have killed her. I'm not encouraging you to steal. I'm not encouraging you to help someone run away. What I'm encouraging you to do is to speak out loud. If you see it in your community, video it, put it out there. Because until each and every one of us use our voices to speak out, we will continue to see those dehumanizing conditions in our communities. Kalash wasn't born a Nobel Peace Prize winner. He was born with a heart that hated injustice. Lema wasn't born a Nobel Peace Prize winner. She was born with a voice that spoke out loud against injustice. Each and every one of you on this campaign has a voice. Let's use it. Build back better, build back stronger, and end child labor in our community. Remember, peace is not just the absence of war. Peace is the presence of every condition that dignifies you and I. Thank you all for having me. I look forward to being back in Liberia and hosting you all in my office to find out how far your campaign is gone. God bless you all. Lots of love to you, my brother Kalash. I can't wait to see you soon.
Thank you so much, Madam Leila. You have spoken a lot, and I think we have learned quite a lot from your speech. And I'd like to say that, yes, indeed, it is important for all of us to raise our voices on the issues. And so in order for us to build better, everybody's hands is needed, everybody's voice is needed on the dock. And so I would like to bring Honorable Mama Carr on stage. And I have a question for her in building back better on government's perspective. And so Honorable Mamina Carr, this question goes to you. To shield the most vulnerable children from harm, we would like to know what has been done from the government in regard thus far. So Honorable Mamina Carr, if you are online, this question is directed to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Share campaigners, for inviting us. My name is Mamina Carr, and I am the Assistant Minister for Children and Social Protection at the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection. Very happy to be can you hear me?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm having some technical problems here. But I was saying I'm very happy to be a part of this program today and to come and talk about the issues of child labor in our country. Labor in Liberia is not strange. And as a matter of fact, from the level of the Ministry of Gender, this is one of the issues that we are faced with the most, and one of the most difficult issues that we have been combating over issue. It is start within other issue. For example, it has to do with, poverty. It has to do with decentralization. It has to do with government-owned or political will. It has to do with funding. There's just a lot within that has to do with child labor within Liberia. So as a result, government of Liberia find it, especially the Ministry of Gender, we find it a kind of difficult to see how this issue of child labor is resolved. In 2016, the ILO reported which is twice as hard than any other region in the world. Liberia is no exception. Today, we still find children who are involved in the worst form of child labor, despite all of the interventions. There are several laws on book, several different laws that that are on book in addressing child labor. In fact, including international protocols and treaties Liberia have signed on to ensure the elimination of child labor in Liberia. But as a minister, especially the Assistant Minister for Children and Social Protection, I cannot sit on this table with you, our partners and other government officials, and say that Liberia, there's no child labor. In fact, it's so visible that when you drive through the streets, you see children selling every part of the streets. But like I said, one of the problems that we are faced with is because child labor is not a standalone issue. It has to do with other things that are involved. Recently, we encountered 22 children who were trafficked from Bapolu to Mosurado County. And the basic reason for which they were trafficked is for them to be forced within the labor market. The lady who they were taking them to was supposed to use them on her farm, because we did the investigation and it was proven that she had like 150 acres of land where these children were being taken. And these children were being taken from their parents under false pretense that these children were going to come to Monrovia to go to school, Kakata to go to school, and that basic social services would be provided. And so we left from there, we went back to investigate why, a town will collect 22 healthy children and just send them out to nobody. When we got to the town, we noticed that the police station is maybe 3 to 2 hours drive away from the town. The nearest police station is not even a station, it's a depot. It's like 3 hours drive for the town. We also noticed there are nowhere in the town. There's no safe drinking water for the children in the town. In fact, the only school that were there, the teachers had left from the town and then came back to Monrovia, and there are no teachers in the town. So the parents felt the only way they could have, access to education or the basic social services is if they gave their children out. And so they were able to give 22 children out to a nobody that they know from nowhere they have not seen before, only because they wanted basic social services for their children. Again, I continue to say, child labor is not a standalone issue. It starts within other issues. Now, that family is not alone. They are not alone in what they did. Most of the children you see on the street today, those are recycled children. These are children that we have removed, we have reunified with their parents, but they continue to come. You will see a child today that you reunify in 2016 or 2019, and you will see the child in maybe Broad Street. And you say, well, you take the child from the street, you come, you check your records. The records is showing that this child was reunified, and you want to know why. And the bottom line here is the economic dividend, decentralization of services, social protection issues, and also ensuring harsher punishment for trafficking of children, particularly internally. It's no secret that the US Embassy released their new report where Liberia was taken from tier 2 to tier 2 watch list because, reports have shown that, there are now more prosecution done for people who are trafficking children. These children who are forced within the labor market, particularly in urban Macerado, these are children who are trafficked from rural communities. People go to rural communities, tell their parents that they are bringing the children here, to provide care and protection, and then use these children, in the labor market to these children become breadwinners of the family. And then in rural parts where, economic activities are not flowing, these children might likely find themselves in the mining sector or in the rubber or cocoa industry within, the rural communities. And this is something that the government has been working on. From the level of the Ministry of Gender, I know we have the Minister of Labor on, who will talk more about our intervention at the level of the TRP Secretariat. I will want to talk more about our own intervention, but also want to talk a little about some of the challenges. I know a lot of people, even our partners, will accuse us that, the issue of labor commitment, they say is low. There are also the issue of weak adaptation of international instruments and national legal systems and insufficient budgetary allocation, especially to government lines, ministries that are responsible to implement and enforce the laws. There are low budgetary allocations to these ministries, something, which continue to be a problem, but is being addressed in some forms and minor. So at the Ministry of Gender, we have been able to do awareness. We do a lot of awareness in the markets, on the streets, in rural communities. We also work with the Liberia churches of the Council of Churches, the Muslims, the religious leaders, internal affairs, for us to continue to raise this awareness. Recently, we're working with the various superintendents from various counties, to create awareness about people going to the villages or to the rural communities to bring their children to the city, in the name of education. And then we have also been able to provide protective care for children who are involved in the worst form of child labor that are, reported by communities and even, community members from rural communities. We take those children, we provide protective care, alternative care. If there's not, we do investigation and then reunification. Where reunification is not possible, then we provide alternative care either to a kingship or then, other forms of alternative care. And then we have also been working as a government to decentralize schools, colleges, and university. Right now, you notice that there are a lot of community colleges all over the country, because this is one of the reasons for which, parents were actually sending their children to urban communities. And then also under social protection, what we noticed from our own investigation, most of the children, there was a boy who they brought they brought him from Nimba, and he was here selling for a lady. The lady had a zinc shack on the road, and she will allow the boy sleep in a zinc shack. He was just 11 years old. She will allow him sleep in a zinc shack because she had her pots and she had, things there that she didn't want them to steal. So she and her family will go home, and the 11-year-old boy will sleep in a zinc shack that had, just a zinc door. There's no lock. You can just go and open it. And that 11-year-old boy was sleeping there every day, every night, until one of our CWCs called us and told us that he noticed there was a boy involved in the worst form of child labor and abuse, and he wanted us to come. We went there 12 o'clock in the night, 12 o'clock in the night, and we saw the laborer in there. He was still cleaning up, washing dishes, cleaning the place and everything, and even had to haul the water that she's supposed to use the next day. And we took that boy, we arrested her, we sent the team to Nimba, and they brought the family, and we told them that this is what was happening to their son. Even though the father confessed that the woman didn't tell him his son was coming to sell, his son was just coming to go to school, he was surprised. But that father looked at us and he told us, he said, I cannot still take my son. I would prefer my son selling and working for this woman as long as he's in school, because none of my children have ever been able to come to the city, or none of my children have ever been able to go to school. The fact that he's even in school, I will want him to stay here no matter the condition that he goes through. So there's a lot of, very sad story. And what they show us as a ministry is that, child labor is not a standalone issue. It has to do with the economic dividend, economic issues. So we, under our social protection issue, we directed our attention to providing cash transfer to the most vulnerable families within the country. There was a survey done across the country where they identified vulnerable communities and vulnerable counties that we started to transfer money to, and Montserrat was not covered. Later on, we decided to cover Montserrat County, where we are giving, cash transfer to vulnerable communities like Blamo Town, Seyon Town, CA Town, Bypass, and other communities around. We are giving them cash transfer. Some people can receive up to 14,000 depending on the amount of children that you have, because we know for sure that the issue of child labor and the issue of children who are being trafficked from other community to the capital is not because parents will want to traffic their children or just give their children out. It's because sometimes these parents cannot actually afford to provide for their children. Another case was 4 group of children we took from the streets. We took them from the market. They were selling plastics. And then we took them and we called their parents who went there. We met their parents and we said, well, why would you allow, the labor? There was a 6-year-old that was also selling along with his brother. The oldest amongst the children was 13. And we said, well, how would you allow a child as young as 6 to join his brothers to sell plastic in the market? It was too alarming for us. And the lady said, the civil crisis had brought them to the city. Her husband died. She had her mother and everybody, the entire family was depending on her. In fact, we met her selling soft rice. She would sell soft rice right on the street. And every profit she gets from the soft rice, she will put some to send them to school, maybe like buy a uniform, because, from 1st grade to 6th grade, it's free. free compulsory education. We have that. It's free, but the parents got to buy uniform, they got to buy textbooks, and the children have to have lunch at, at least to be able to have something in their stomach. So she said the money that they were selling for was that money that was coming to support her. It was money that they could use as lunch to take to school. So we asked her, but if we want to take these children from on the street and provide textbooks, she said that it means you people will have to also provide lunch, because if the children do not have lunch to go to school, it doesn't look good. So the only way I'm able to provide lunch if they can help me to sell and provide lunch for themselves. So these are problems, and we cannot divorce the issue of child labor from the economic crisis within the country. So we now started providing cash transfer to family members, and then also in rural communities, we started to add accompanying measures to the cash we provide, because it's not just about providing the cash, but also ensuring that the cash is being used for the actual purpose for which it was given. We started providing seeding to people to do gardening, backyard gardening, and then also monitoring, training them into businesses, how to manage funding, and so forth. Another thing we've done, because the Ministry of Gender is actually understaffed to be able to monitor or supervise or even implement all of the laws that we have on board. Currently, we have 64 social workers under the ministry in the entire country. So we have 15 counties with 64 social workers. Imagine what that means is, even Maserado, 17 districts. If we say we should have a social worker in each of the districts, it means that other counties might not even have, social workers within the counties, even though we have our partners from the NGO who also have social workers who are, helping us in that life, but we're also able to come up with the CWCs. So of recent, we've been able to get support from UNICEF for us to be able to recruit more CWCs. Now, CWCs are our child welfare committees. These are people who are trained to watch out for, child labor, child abuse, and be able to report to the Ministry of Gender. So in every community in the country, we try to train them, even though we're not able to do it in every community, but we have started doing the recruitment. We already have some existing CWCs within other communities, but we are recruiting more communities to get involved in this, get involved with the CWC's work, and UNICEF is giving them, scratch card, backpacks, and, some small support so that they are able to report. But from our end, I am happy to be a part of this program, and I want to say to the organizer that the Ministry of Gender is very, very much open. This is a problem. This is epidemic, in fact, epidemic, we can even say, because it's found within all parts of Africa, even other parts of the world as well, even though it may not be as worse as it is in, Africa as a whole. But this is an issue that we cannot turn a blind eye to. Even yesterday, the minister and myself was saying it is becoming embarrassing that the ministry will continue to make progress in other areas, and when you go to talk about it, then they come and attack you about children selling on the street, and you cannot provide strong, justification for why these children. This is something that we ourselves have, have highlighted. We have turned our eyes to. We want to work within that direction. In fact, ECOWAS and UNICEF recently we signed a MOU, or we have an MOU that we are about to sign under the ECOWAS strategic framework. It has 5 pillars: children on the move, and child labor is one of those pillars that we are looking at strongly. So this is something that we are working on already, but we will be very happy to have this extra hand, this extra push, and we are willing and open to give you all of our support, because this is a form of buttressing government's effort. This is government work that you are doing, and it is, only incumbent upon us to give you all the support that we can give you. We will work with you. Whatever you want government to do, you can count on us. The government will be very open, especially the Ministry of Gender, to helping you to, implementing and campaigning to ensure that even if we cannot eradicate, but at least we can eliminate the worst form of child labor in Liberia, and also try to see how we can come together and continuously enforce and implement the many policies and laws that we have on book. And before I close, it will be good to say that the recent DAC that we just had, last DAC was on child justice system, and this DAC, one of the biggest recommendations that came out of this year DAC, the DAC is the Day of the African Child. It's a time when we can bring all of the children from across the country, the conversion of particular county, and then talk about issues that are affecting them, and then also put forth recommendation to the government of Liberia, and also elect their officials, people who will represent them, and continue to advocate for them. And the DAC, one of the biggest recommendations that came from there was reviewing the children's law, because the children's law came in since 2011. It has been more than 5 years, but reviewing the children's law to ensure that there is punishment within the children, because the children's law is just a toothless bulldog, that it speaks on everything. It speaks on child labor, but if you go against it, what will happen? It does not address that. So UN, UNICEF have already given us their support. SOS2 has given us their support, and this is something that we are already thinking about working on. So the campaign came in right at the time that we needed it to come in, and we'll be really very open to working with you at all times. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Carr. I think you've shared a lot with us, and I must say that we are quite relieved to hear of the social and then economic interventions you are doing for your country to eliminate child labor. And I also think that it's important to work in partnership in order to increase the awareness and then the education we give to our locals and then our students in order to eradicate or eliminate these issues that we are facing with regards to child labor. So thank you so much for your contribution. We are grateful to have you. Next, joining us from JIS is the project manager and then the regional resource governance project from Liberia, Audrey Cash. She'll be addressing the challenge of child labor at a more direct and industry-focused level and the interventions they have made to tackle it. So in view of this, I would like to welcome Audrey Cash. Audrey Cash, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Let me start my video. I have a short presentation also share with everybody on the screen.
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please. I can hear you, Dr. Audrey.
Okay. Can you I was trying to my screen with the presentation, but I don't think I'm able to. I have that.
You're talking about the presentation?
Yes. I had a point to share. I was going to share my screen. Is that possible?
Yes. It's the host can share his screen with you, but otherwise they have to make you a co-host in order to share your screen. So Winnie, if you are online, is it possible for her to share her screen? Okay, so Dr. Audrey, you have been made a co-host, so I believe you can share your screen with us now, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Can you see my screen now? It's a presentation.
Yes, I can see. Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. It's a presentation.
Okay. So thank you very much for having us. As the introduction said, that I am working with the GIZ on the regional resource governance. And I am going to share a few statistics. I know the Assistant Minister just said that having many statistics isn't always good, but I think it's also good to get an idea of what the situation is in the country. So a little bit about the Resources Governance Project. We are funded jointly by the European Union and the GIZ, or the German government, the BMZ. We are actually part of a regional project with Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, and Sierra Leone, because the issue surrounding mining and mineral resources is best tackled regionally. With the support of the GIZ, GIZ works with their various stakeholders, governments, civil society organizations, and companies in order to promote better governance of mineral resources. And I want to stress that we, as GIZ, we are an organization that really takes the lead from our stakeholders. As such, we do not sort of suggest what our stakeholders should do as activities, but we work with them on a technical level and support them in their particular goals. So that's sometimes a little bit different than some of the other organizations. As you can see, we also work on a lot of our project does touch on several of the sustainable development goals, including ending poverty, decent work and economic growth, responsible production and consumption of goods, environment, climate change, and justice, peace, strong institutions, as well as partnerships. We have 4 objectives in the with our project. One of them here is to, the first one is to, oh, I'm trying to hide something, sorry. We would like to help with the mining sector in increasing the tax system. We want to promote the state functions and able to help with reinforcement of social environmental standards. The assistant minister mentioned this as a big concern within the government, and the ability to reinforce regulations and rules and to help with monitoring. So we do some of that. We are looking at improving transparency and accountability, as well as providing strategic advice on increasing the contribution of the mining sector to national and local economic development. Within the country of Liberia, the statistics I have here and the information I have here is taken from a United States Department of Labor report that was done in 2018-2019. And this is just an overview of what child labor looked like in Liberia a few years ago. And you can see child labor is pretty much prevalent in most of the sectors: agriculture, industry, and services. You see that the diamond and gold activity, including washing gravel and using mercury and cyanide, fall into the industry component. But in addition, there are things like cutting and crushing stone, not just for stone mining, but within artisanal small-scale mining. So these are things that obviously a child should not be doing. You'll see at the very bottom of the table that the worst forms of child labor include illicit activities like selling drugs. But the mining industry does not really see that particular activity. Again, from 2014-2018, the report showed that the working sector of children by sector, ages 5 to 14, include the majority of them are here in agriculture, then services, and then industry. I have found in the area of child labor, within the mining sector, there has not been a lot of research on child labor in mining within the country of Liberia. Of course, worldwide, this is a huge problem. Primarily, children are used for 2 reasons. One of them is that they do not command a higher salary, if we can say that, higher salary, but what one might pay an adult, someone who's owning a mine might only pay a child, will pay a child a fraction of that. But also children, because of their size, they are also able to be used for, especially underground mining, places where adults cannot go. And they are also used for a lot of the labor things, so carrying things, washing. In small scale mining, you have to use mercury and cyanide to try and separate the gold from the rock. But you see that in industry right now, well, a few years ago, the statistics showed that only 4.2% of child labor is in industry. And of that, of course, the last table I showed you, and mining is only part of that. The second table you see here shows the percentage of the statistics of children's work in education. And you can see the primary completion rate is just under 60%, which could be worse, but of course could be much better. And you see that from 5 to 14 is when you find the percentage is a little bit higher. And there have been a few, again, because not a lot of research has been done about the situation in Liberia. You can see here, I've just pulled out a few key bits of information from several reports. And you can see that within the mining industry, it's alluvial diamond mining and artisanal gold mining. This is a small scale mining. Very rarely, because of international standard, do you find children or child labor being utilized in the large scale mining. In Liberia, the small scale mining, artisanal gold mining, is classified as Class C, as an ABC mining. And this is where you find the child labor. Children in Liberia engage in the worst forms of child labor, including mining of gold and diamonds. And the reason why gold and diamonds is added here is because of the prevalent use of cyanide and mercury. These are very dangerous chemicals to be used, and in mining, they are used without very much care to how people are using them with gloves or protective clothing, but also the long-term effects. We at GIZ have partnered with a couple of our local organizations to help teach people about the use of mercury and what its negative impacts are. So that's one of the things we have been doing in our knowledge and capacity building at the community level. There have been, according to the report, one of the ways that was suggested by government to try and eliminate child labor in mining was to expand existing social programs to address the scope of the child labor problem, which the assistant minister alluded to already, and particularly in domestic work, the production of rubber and gold and diamond mining. Again, these are low-skilled jobs, or they're used. Children are used in these areas because they are cheap and they are very low skill. So looking when governments are producing projects or programs to eliminate child labor in mining and other areas, they really have to look at ways in which the social aspect and how to get more children into school, and to try and sort of normalize the idea that children under the age of 15 should only be doing very light work, and they should be really spending most of their time in school and not at work. So unfortunately, I don't have much more for you regarding mining in Liberia, but this is what we have at this point. There isn't much, and we are hoping that there'll be more research done, especially because mining is one of the largest contributors to the Liberian economic system. So what we don't want to see is more illegal child labor being used for such a large part of the economy of Liberia. So I think that's where I will stop now. I'm sure I've gone over my 5 minutes. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks so much for that presentation. And we look forward as Campaign Liberia work with GIZ as an international solidarity to push for child labor in Liberia. Thanks so much. And next, I want to notice that we have a few speakers and the meeting is 5 minutes time and those things to do in this room. So 5 minutes the next. So let us know that, please. And next will be the executive director on Action for Justice and Human Rights, AJHR, and the UN leader sustainability goals, Sarah Sharif. Can you please the poll?
Thank you very much. I'm so honored to join this conversation. Along with me, I have some members of Action for Justice and Human Rights that are also in the office and following the conversation as well. Civil society organizations at this point in time play a huge role in the fight against child labor in Liberia. As organizations that are working to protect human rights in Liberia, it's important that we continue to speak out against the worst forms of abuse against children. And it starts just by all the work that we do. We must make sure that it's both child-friendly, is inclusive. It's both inclusive and involves the participation of children. But how do we ensure that we involve children in the work that we do without, violating the rights of children as well? So, civil society institutions needs to take measure, ensuring that they have policies, safeguarding policies that protect the rights and best interests of children at all levels. And there, I know some years back, we participated in the development of the pathway to, but then was on protecting children from worst forms of violence in Liberia. And for us at Action for Justice, we stand by the principle that says whatever we do, at the end of the day, we must ensure that children's rights are protected. We seek the best interests of children. And so we have safeguarding policies, we have consent forms. And I just hope that other institutions that do similar work like us at civil society can also emulate the good of other organizations. And just as we call on the government to do more to get the organizations too, must get involved during this crisis. So many children lives have been affected by COVID-19. After the crisis, that integrate and continue to work and ensure the best interest of children. It means as institutions, society organizations must come up with ways and programs that include children, but also protect the rights of children. And the contribution of civil society.
Oh, okay, Seattle. Because of time, we will be right there. That was the word of civil society in the fight of child labor. Thanks so much. She's the executive director of AJR.
Organizations can come from different angles. It can be from policy standpoint to procuring, the conference, national government accountable. Thank you so much, Madam.
Alistair, can you get me? So we'll hold you up there and we move to the next speaker. So that was the role of society in the fight of child labor. Thanks so much. So next will be our child rights advocate and deputy speaker of the Children's Parliament, Matu C. Welcome you on this platform. Alimatu, are you there?
Okay, thank you very much for affording me the opportunity, and thanks for initiating such a campaign to end child labor in Liberia. This is crazy. These people, what are they doing?
Yeah, Alimatu, is everything okay with the background, or are you? Or we can take it next after this year, then we'll just wrap up. So I think we will take the National Student Union next, and Alman will be the last speaker to wrap up. So, like, permit me to pronounce Mohammed Kamar, National Student Union President of the Republic of Liberia. Mohammed, you welcome. Mohammed?
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay. Are you back? Okay, so like, all right. So you have 5 minutes, Diallo.
So, like I said, this year is another year for all of us, including the children of Liberia, and many of us, like the other speakers, have spoken that there are a series of violations against children in Liberia, and it's so saddening to say that Liberia is signatory to most of the laws, including the United Nations Convention on the Rights, of a Child, the African Chapter on the Rights and the Welfare of the Child, and so many other laws that prohibits violation, against children. Today, if you go on the street of Monrovia, you will see so many children on the street serving as breadwinners. And like the previous speaker said, this thing about child labor is not, one person. It's not a one-person thing. It's something that we all need to get involved. It's something that we have to, sensitize our people, because the issue about the increase in child labor or sexual gender-based violence, sometimes our parents, are involved. Imagine taking your child from the rural area, bringing the child. I know the child needs education and all of that, but then selling that child, the issue about domestic, child trafficking is a huge problem in Liberia. People are taking children, using them, in the mining sector, in other areas for hazardous, work and all of that, which is not a good, sign for our country. Every time people will tell you that the future belongs to the young people, and yes, I agree, but I have a little, should I say, on uncertain mind that the future is not for the young people in Liberia. Reason being because they are not protected. There are a series of violations against them, and yet the government, the people, the community, they feel the young people, they lack so many implementation with regards to the laws and all of that. So my recommendation to the government of Liberia is that if there is an urgent need that, the Ministry of Education include the issue about, children's rights and responsibility within the curriculum, and other, rights that will also respect, every child in Liberia. The issue about the child labor and all of that. These are all things that will help, because if children, if these things are taken, to communities, to mosques, to churches, and all of that, there will be a decrease, in violations against children and young people. I mentioned in my Day of the African Child speech, children need to be, like a direct children need to have a direct representation in the president's office, like we have the youth representative, because only a child knows what he or she feels. Because if this child is taken to the mining sector doing hazardous work, he knows or she knows how to explain. So if that space is being created where that child can speak to the president direct, that child is having a representative, or the children is having a representative at his office, obviously it will work out. With the issue about the 2011 children's law, it's like a law that doesn't have no effect. There is no punishment for those that would, violate the law. So, imagine like telling somebody, okay, don't do this one, but if you don't do it, you get no punishment, you get nothing out of it. So it makes the law like to be like worthless. And I'm encouraging all of us, the issue about child labor, sexual gender-based violence, and other, worst form of violence against children and young people in Liberia. Girls have faced with so many challenges and continue to face with the issue of menstrual hygiene, in schools and all of that. They lack all of these things. So it is through this, I'm very sure and connected that this campaign will help. To and reduce child labor in Liberia, and the young people can have a better future. But the issue about the future is now, and we have to invest more in educating them and all of that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Almato, for that. So, and just to relate, the Minister of Labor sent his view that he's another symposium with the Senate Committee on Labor. So in his regards as well. And next, we're not being the National Student Union President, and I will go to our wrap-up sessions. We all pay attention to this. So in the next few weeks, we will converge again to work on our key priority areas, from advocating national commitments, social protection, community pledges, eliminate child labor policy change. We will have a series of consultative meetings, forums ahead of engagement with policymakers. The main goal is to ensure no children are left behind. On this note, I will call to order this event, and thanking the Civil Society Organization, the National Student Union, international organizations, guests, speakers. We want to extend our gratitude for this, our first, the launch of the campaign in Liberia. To our noble laureates, we salute you, your personal work so much, and we look forward to engage, not beyond a virtual. Like Lib says, together our communities, together we can make it. Like Otto also said, the chance together, we need everyone's support. We need everyone time to invest. And the Honorable Minister Mamina Khan said that it is like a disease or pandemic, child labor. So as we converge in series weeks, let us ensure participation and let us make this work, and no child is left behind. And I will turn to my colleague Winnie, my co-presenter Hada. If there is anything to be said, we can just wrap this up. Like our coordinator, Winnie.
Thank you, Ewell. Mine is just to wrap on behalf of the Fair Share campaign in Africa, and thank you to all the speakers who have made time, and even to the audience who actually constitute the national leads of the campaign in their different countries, from Uganda to Namibia to Tanzania. They are all here. Thank you so much and have a good evening.
And thanks everyone for me. Have a good evening.
Thank
So
you.
much. Bye.
You have a good evening.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you so much.